Right, so I want to reiterate this point about river to sea and also all this claims of anti-Semitism going on. So, river to sea, to my mind, means the country that I was in 1986, traveling around on my own in Israel, hitchhiking, getting on buses, sleeping under the stars in cheap hotels. And yeah, so it was all one big country. There was no fences, no walls. There was the West Bank and Gaza were all part of Israel. It was said to be a democracy. There were problems. Obviously, there was oppression. There was some apartheid. There's problems like that in many, many countries. So at that time, I think a lot of people thought, well, it's got issues, but it'll get better over time. 1986, right? So one big country from river to sea called Israel. And that's what I think was the best Israel that ever existed, maybe ever, because it was fairly peaceful. And, the name, unfortunately, is sectarian, whether you like it or not. It's a very sectarian name, especially, it just is. So, and the fact that the Jewish state, or rather the Israeli state, has in 2000 and, what was it, 2018 maybe, not that long ago, declared that it was a Jewish state, which is just weird. And I think they mean that Jews from all over the world can come back there, that same old thing, but that's a bit crazy, especially since they don't really let African Jews in that much, or send them back, black people. So what is it? Is it a Jewish state for Jews only, when the Israeli government has that as part of their policies? They call it a Jewish state, which is weird. A lot of the media call it a Jewish state as well, because I never thought of it like that when I was there in 1986. I thought it was named after a Jewish tribe from 2,000 years ago, which is what it is. But I didn't think of it as a Jewish state, because I met all sorts of people from every religion, giving me lifts or rides, as we say in America, hitchhiking around. People just coming up, old people, usually old men, just coming up and talking to me, from Muslims to Jews to Christians. I hitchhiked in the middle of the night, through the middle of the night on my own, through what's now called Palestine, which was the West Bank back then. So I got the bus from the Dead Sea after sleeping out under the stars on the top of the Masada, if you know what that is, on my own. And then got the bus from there to Jericho, hitchhiked from there overnight towards the Sea of close to the Sea of Galilee. And, I was picked up by the school teacher who was really nice to me, Palestinian. And he was telling me about some of the oppressions in terms of water and electrical power cuts that kept going on in the city he was in. So you could tell it wasn't perfect, but what country's perfect? Let me know. It was a great place. At least you felt, yeah, I know I was an outsider, white privilege, all that, but at least you felt, well, there's hope for it. There's a lot of tensions, but, there's a lot of tensions in a lot of places. And I live in America, the highest prison population per capita on the planet. And certainly a lot of racism and built-in systemic racism and things like that, which takes decades, hundreds of years to resolve that. It's getting better, actually, even since I've been here. So, not a great country in many ways, America, right? I mean, if you want to go to, let's say you want to go to Palestine, I'd recommend it. Go walk around Palestine, but I don't recommend walking around some parts of Chicago or San Francisco or something like that. I'd be careful around there. I'd be more worried about that. But certainly, it was one big country, river to sea, called Israel. But I would change the name because it's too sectarian. I mean, if you're attached to that name, it's because of tribalism or sectarianism of some sort. It's a sort of childish thing to be attached to that name. So change the name. Don't call it Palestine, even though that is an ancient name given to the region thousands of years ago. But I'd call it something completely unoffensive to everybody. So, because Israel's this tribe which is very sectarian it just has this sectarian past, as do many tribes or cultures, whatever. So it's very common, but I don't think I know any other country on earth that is named after such a sectarian a tribe like that that's still around, and there's all these tensions going on. So change the name would be a good idea. It's never going to happen, all of this. It's too late. Everything's a mess. But the 1986 Israel I was in, which was claimed to be a democracy back then, that's what river to sea means. That's what the Palestinians mean. That's what anybody that says it means. It doesn't mean wiping out Jews. The Gazans, they don't mean that. The Hamas, they don't mean that. Now, there might be one or two lunatics in every group or political group, whatever it is, who are going against the whole policies of the whole group. That happens everywhere. But the Hamas Charter of 2017 clearly states that they're not against Jews or Judaism. They're against this oppressive regime, whatever you want to call it. Don't call it Jews, because if you do, if you're saying Israeli government is Jews, then you're saying it's not a democracy. But it is a democracy, isn't it? You're saying it is. So it is a democracy of sorts. So the regime, the Israeli state, is what they're against. They're not against Jews or Judaism. That's a fact. So yeah, there'll be bad apples in every group. And just with the attacks by Hamas on October the 7th, first of all, the Israeli counter-offensive killed a lot of Hamas, but also a lot of its own people, the Israelis. They've admitted it. But the Hamas attack, essentially, there's some bad apples maybe in every army, right? But that's not their policy, and that wasn't their. It's been easily provable now that there was no evidence of most of those atrocities. So yeah, there might be some bad apples, but overall, they were just desperate, trying to get out of that situation they were in, and so and stuck in this place, Gaza. They don't even know. Most of those people are pretty young, and they don't know anything about the world. So you've basically got these people who are stuck in this place, and they can go to university because, Qatar gave Gaza a lot of money to try to, out of compassion, Qatar, to try to help them build universities, roads, and housing, and even resorts, trying to make the place nicer, give them jobs. But Israel has bombed all that now. Quite nice places, really, considering it was Gaza. But the money came from Qatar, out of compassion for the Gazans, try and make it a better place. But I don't think we can go back to the Israel of 1986. But that would have been ideal. River to sea, a democracy, right? That's what it should be, right? So river to sea, a democracy, right? Which is, a lot of Arabic countries are sort of democracies. We may think they're not perfect. Fair enough. But ours isn't. In America, it's a terrible democracy. It's a mess. And it's easy to prove that there's a lot of manipulation of the system in America, with redistricting of states so that the votes of certain people are sort of shunted aside, right? And then this two-party system, and every election in America, there are claims of people being shut out of the process, things like that. It goes on all the time. It's a huge thing. I don't know if you don't live here, you don't know about it, but every election is a huge thing. You often get liberals or Democrats saying that huge groups of people were locked out because for various reasons, right? They couldn't vote, right? And then you got the redistricting, which causes a huge amount of people to not really have an effect within the state. So tell me the perfect democracy. But Israel, 1986, when I was there, was quite good, getting better slowly. If it just kept getting better slowly. So there were many mistakes made, and some very brutal people came along, like Netanyahu, just a real disgusting shell of a human being. And his crowd. So bring back the democracy, one state solution, 1986. And never going to happen, of course. So that's river to sea. And now with all this anti-Semitism, claims of anti-Semitism, you just had, I think it was a high official or president or some high official of one of the big universities, Harvard or something like that, brought up in Congress and a couple of other places. And somehow they were pushed into this thing where they're supposed to denounce denounce anti-Semitism or genocide of Jews. Well, while there's a kind of a genocide going on in Gaza as we speak, they've turned it around to focus on these universities to try to force them into a situation where they have to, they're trying to force them to be on one side or the other. So I think her answer was basically something along, there's a couple of people there. So the main one was along the lines of, well, it depends on the situation. So I presume that she means by that in a classroom, you're teaching about genocide, you can say the phrase that there was an attempted genocide of the Jews in the 1940s, right? You're allowed to say that. So I presume that's what she meant when she said it depends on the context. But all these lunatics and right-wingers and left-wingers, everyone, mentally unstable, basically, have taken it out of context to mean, or have meant it to mean, oh, you're okay with the genocide of the Jews. Well, first of all, Zionism doesn't mean Jews at all, as many Jews have professed many, many times over. And secondly, calling for river to sea, as I've explained, in a democracy, which is what Hamas and Palestinians want. They have a democracy in Palestine, right? Women can vote, for example. They have it. Christians can vote if they're living there. Any Jews can vote if they happen to be living in Palestine, which there might be one or two. And question yourself, what is a Jew anyway? I mean, what does that even mean? How do you know what's a Jew and what's not? Well, I mean, you might think of ways to do that, but it's pretty brutal if you're going to try and find out who's a Jew and who's not. So it's just sort of craziness to talk about Jews and Arabs when they're all Semites and Abrahamists, the Christians, the Jews, the Arabs, and certainly the Jews and Palestinians, they're all Semites. That's what a Semite means, so that's where it gets confusing for a lot of people as well, right? So this professor or president was brought up, and everyone took out or tried to make it into her saying that genocide of Jews is okay. That's all mixed up with all these other words that people are using incorrectly, such as intifada and jihad. Those words have a meaning in their language. It means intifada means resistance. Jihad means struggle. It's all been built up in your mind to make it sound like it's something else. People use words differently and make mistakes sometimes. But the claims of anti-Semitism going on in the hysteria in America and other places by adults who say they're scared because they're Jewish, well, it's Muslims who have been targeted in America, killed and shot. 3 people in my state were shot just last week. A 6-year-old Muslim boy was stabbed to death because of your mad hysteria over they're going to do a new Holocaust and the Palestinians are evil and the Jews are saints, whatever. This is madness. So the river to sea does not mean what you're saying it means. And you have to admit, or you have to realize that there are many Arabic democracies of sorts. You might not like it, but like I say, every democracy, especially America, is not fair. It's not a fair democracy. If you think that, you're clueless. It's a two-headed monster, Democrats and Republicans who vote for every war that ever came along. And part of a political, military, industrial, news complex, right? So it's not great. It's a mess. However, we'll see what happens in 2024. That's going to be really interesting. So the democracy, is it a democracy in Israel? You can argue about that back and forth. There's certainly problems with it, huge problems, in fact. However, you can argue that it's supposed to be a sort of a democracy. So let's have the whole of Israel a democracy. No walls, no fences, back to what it was in 1986. And we'll call it river to sea a democracy, right? It might end up being like Morocco or Egypt in terms of democracy. But don't forget, Gaza also was a democracy, because all these people, Israelis and others, are saying things like, well, they might not be Hamas, so we can bomb them. We can bomb them because they might not be Hamas, these innocent civilians and children, but these innocent civilians, but they voted for Hamas. Oh, it's a democracy. You said it yourself. Women vote in Gaza, etc. But a lot of Arabic countries, especially now, maybe in the past 10, 20 years ago were different, but basically a lot of them are quite democratic. Christians, Jews, Muslims can vote, atheists, whatever, can vote in places like Egypt, Morocco, wherever. So that's what they're looking for. And if you think that they want some kind of Sharia law over the whole thing, that's made up. It's from 40 years ago. Someone in that group of terrorists said that, right, in ISIS or something, in some kind of charter that then became called the Hamas Charter. But that's ISIS. That's long ago been swept aside by Hamas. And in 2017, they made it really clear in their new charter that they're not against Jews or Judaism. So this video is about how that is. And I've probably missed a lot of things out because it's really hard to cover this. So ask me questions or make some points, intelligent points, please. And but that's it for me. It's river to sea in the Israel of 1986, where there were no walls, fences. There's one big country, includes Gaza and Palestine, and make it into as good a democracy as you can. And this hysteria over anti-Semitism is causing murders of Palestinians and attempted murders in America right now. So there are very few Jewish people who have been killed because of this. There's no new Holocaust coming or against the Jews that you keep. Many people are claiming that's what's happening. And so that's why they're going after everybody and calling them anti-Semites all the time, because now they have to turn the tables to take your attention away from the fact that it's Palestinians that are being targeted in America, not Jews. There was one old man that got killed in a protest. He was a provocateur of sorts, right? He just was, not a 6-year-old innocent boy in Chicago, who should not be forgotten, by the way. And with respect to his family, I don't talk about it much, but I think it should be a symbol of the hysteria of the people calling everybody an anti-Semite. And then 3 people shot in my state, Palestinians, young Palestinians, just recently in Vermont. So there's probably others, let me know if there are. But if I've missed something out, let me know. But Israel, river to sea, the old Israel of 1986, change the name because it's too sectarian, and stop your madness over this, calling everyone an anti-Semite, because you're causing Palestinians to get targeted, not Jews. And by the way, they are all Semites, right? So don't forget that. So it's Semite versus Semite. So, just your brothers, shake hands and get on with it. Call Israel by the ancient Abrahamic Semitic language, which Semitic means Abrahamic, basically, something like that, right? It's not Jews. Call it by the old Semitic languages, Abrahamic language that would have been around when Abraham is supposed to have been around. Just the language. Call it peace country in that language. Get rid of the name Israel. River to sea, a democracy. That's what I call for. Okay, bye.